Hey, Shaun, I am really excited to be talking with you today after doing a lot of research on the things that you've done throughout your career, things that have happened in your life. I'm really excited about the new book that you've got out here, The Surfer and the Sage. First of all, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking out a time out of your day.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks so much for having me. And it seems like you're doing so much to help empower people and help empower men. And this is wonderful to be on. Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate it. I tell you what, every day I've got to get myself inspired. I've got to get my cup overflowing, and it's people like you that most certainly allow me to go out and do what I feel like my purpose is. So speaking of purpose, you authored a book called The Surfer and the Sage, and it really is about helping people find their purpose. And I want to get into that. I want to get into the code method, which is something that you have discovered and have done, and even back into your surfing days. But let's start really quick, if you don't mind, with just a little bit of a history. Let people know, who you are, the accomplishments that you've been able to achieve over your lifetime, and then, of course, everything that's kind of maybe built up to where you're at right now in life.
So in my early days, I was a pro surfer. I helped build pro surfing along with a couple of my friends from Australia, South Africa, and Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
There's no such thing as a pro surfing circuit, and there was just isolated events around the world. And we helped create an organization and a structure, and we helped build a surfing industry that today is worth about $100 billion.
Wow.
I had one of the sort of the top 10 organizations, companies in that field making surfing apparel. It was called Instinct Sportswear. So I was a pro surfer for a long time. I competed in my first pro event when I was 17. I was the youngest guy to win, and then I competed in my last pro event in 1990, and I was the oldest guy to win. The last time I won, I think, an event, I was about 34 years old. All my records have been broken by an amazing guy called Kelly Slater.
Yeah.
But I competed for a long time, had a wonderful time while I was competing. I was sponsoring other surfers as well through my company Instinct. I sponsored a young Australian, Tom Carroll, to 2 world titles.
Wow.
In fact, in 1985, Tom and I were gunning for the world title. I led the whole year, and the little bastard just beat me at the end there. And then but it was wonderful to help other young guys realize their dreams. I sponsored another Australian, Barton Lynch, to win a world title in 1988. So it was great to both be a competitor, an entrepreneur, and in many ways a mentor as well.
Mm-hmm.
I got involved in environmental causes at a young age as well. I became the first ambassador for the leading surfing environmental organization called Surfrider Foundation when it was formed in 1984. In fact, they asked me they said, Shaun, we really need a poster for our very first ad, and we need copy as well. So I wrote the copy for the first ad, which was "Do a Good Turn Today," and I had a picture of me doing a bottom turn, which is a fundamental maneuver in surfing. And those 5 words, I think in many ways had become a mantra for my life. Simple: do a good turn today. And I wrote it, it must have been 30 years ago, so long ago. And it's really sort of become like a North Star and really pushed me in a different path where I've realized the power and value of words. And I think the words that have the most power of all are not the words of Barack Obama or Ronald Reagan or Winston Churchill or Martin Luther King, but our own words. Our own words are the activators for action.
Yeah.
And I've really come to realize this. I speak to hundreds of millions of people, and I found that when people write their own mission, they write their own forward path, it has tremendous effect and tremendous impact. And we can get into that a little bit later. But after I retired from the pro tour, in 1990, I sold my first company, Instinct. And my wife and I moved to the United States, and we moved here, and I worked for this most amazing company. I think it's perhaps one of the greatest companies in the history of the world. It's called Patagonia. I don't know if you're familiar, but Yvonne Chenard hired me, and I actually stayed in their family home for 6 months while my wife was packing everything up, and worked for them for a couple of years. And He gave his company away 2 weeks ago. He gave away a $3 billion company. He gave the company away to a foundation that's focused on environmental causes. This is how strongly he believes in purpose and environmental causes. He said, "We're now not a profit company; we're a for-purpose company," which is beautiful. So I worked for them for a couple of years, for Patagonia for a few years. I had a wonderful experience learning about purpose and purpose in the context of business. And then my wife and I started a new company, Instinct. My first company was about riding inside that tube of the wave, that tunnel of the wave, when you're operating on a really high level athletically, when you're in the state of flow, when you operate instinct.
Yes.
Solitude was about escape. The internet had just been sort of developed, and we were just, information was bombarding us from all sides. So solitude was about escape, and we created this beautiful brand. And my wife was a designer. We sold to all the great shops around the country: Saks, Barney's, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, and all the great surf shops, outdoor stores. And we located our offices right across the road from this amazing surfing break called Rincon. Incredible wave, one of the greatest waves in the world. And I got a phone call from the same guy that had phoned me when Surfrider Foundation was forming and wanted me to be their first ambassador. He said, "Shaun, Rincon's facing an environmental challenge and we need your help to fix it, just like you helped us with Surfrider Foundation." He said, "I'm going to bring a group of children down to the beach, and the local water board and the local government and the media to highlight this problem." He said, "I want you to give these kids something. It's a big problem. It's like a $30 million problem." And I went home that night and I thought, like, what can I really give to these children to inspire them? He said, "You've got $100 budget, about 100 kids. So like, what can you do with $100? And I really went back to what I did when I helped Surfrider Foundation. Originally, I went back to the power of words. So I pulled out a sheet of paper, and now millions of people do this exercise. But back then, I was just like going on my own path. And I pulled out a sheet of paper, and in 20 minutes, I wrote 12 lines. And I wrote down 12 lines, every line beginning with "I will." And I wrote down the principal lessons that surfing had taught me about life. Not how to be the best surfer in the world or ride the biggest waves or find the deepest tube rides, but about honor and integrity and camaraderie and connectivity and brotherhood and resilience and perseverance. And I wrote 12 lines, starting with "I will never turn my back on the ocean. I will always paddle back out." And I printed them up on a little card, plastic card, and I gave them out to these kids, and the kids got stoked and the media got stoked, and eventually we solved the problem. But these cards kept on rolling, man, like a wave. And we started putting the cards in the pockets of our board shorts and our shirts. So tens of thousands of these cards were getting distributed out into sort of the culture. And then people would phone me up, "Hey, Shaun, why don't you come and talk at our group of lawyers, or why don't you talk at our leadership group about the code?" Because people were fascinated by values, by something super simple.
Yeah.
And I started speaking at these massive events. I mean, I'd speak with Richard Branson and Malcolm Gladwell, thousands and thousands of people. They talking about their amazing books and entrepreneurial success. I talk about a code, about values. And then at another event, that Glenn Henning, the same guy who contacted me about Surfrider and the same guy who contacted me about the environmental problem at Rincon, said, "Shaun, I'm doing an event. I'd love you to come and talk." And Josh, for anyone that's listening out there, there's a fundamental imperative here. And that is, when someone asks you to do something, don't bloody say no. Say yes.
Yeah.
Because when you say yes, your life will change.
Yeah.
Life is not about saying no. Life is about saying yes. And you read all these academic books and they tell you to say no, and you're so busy and be so. I'm going, the best things in my life have happened when people have asked me to help and I've gone yes. And it's not like it's helped them, it's helped me. Yes, it's helped them. It's helped me 1,000 times more. It's like when you help someone, the real beneficiary is yourself. Not, yes, you helping someone, but ultimately it's just making you a better person. So I'm at this event now, and a guy comes up to me after I've spoken about the code and values. He said, Shaun, I think this would make a great book. I mean, well, I've never written a book. And he said, well, I've never written a book either, but I'm a professor of French literature at Drury University in Missouri. He said, and I know a lot about literature. So we collaborated. We wrote my first book. It was called Surface Code. And then that led to more books, and it led to more books that led to eventually speaking all over the world to the biggest companies and the best universities, and getting everyone to write the code, 12 lines. Every line beginning with I will, and then share it. And, it took my life down a different path, because ultimately my wife and I sold Solitude. And then we lost our beautiful son, who was 15 and a half.
Yeah. Just
a beautiful teenage boy that played a dangerous game that he heard about at school called the choking game, just this dreadful game. And that then took my life down a different path. But the code and the power of words really, I think, helped me and helped my wife find a new path. And the more I spoke and the more I helped people with my perspective, not my prescription, just my perspective and the code method. So I offer a perspective and the code method. I don't offer any prescription. The more work I did, the more it helped me. And the more I decided, man, this is really, it's impacting me in such a positive way, and it's helping other people, find their purpose, find their power, find their path. I kept going down this, on this journey, and it was beautiful for me, Josh. It helped me so much in my life. So then, just before COVID, a mate of mine phones me up. He said, "Hey, Shaun, I think you should meet this cool dude. He's a great guy. He's like a philosopher, poet. He's been nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. It's a very famous literary prize."
Yeah.
And he said, "You should meet." So now we go down and we meet at this local restaurant just down the road from me. And we sit down and we chat. So he chats for about 5 minutes, I chat, and we just had an instant connection. Like, you seem to be a super cool bloke. I'm just telling you straight. So you know what I mean? You can just have like a connection with people.
Yeah. Yes.
He says to me, "Hey, Shaun," now he's written millions, he's sold millions of books. He said, "Hey, Shaun, let's write a book together." Just like that. I mean, okay, we'll call it The Surfer and the Sage. And he says, "Okay, a guide to survive and ride life's waves."
Wow.
3 minutes.
That's how you came up with this.
That's how we came up with it. Okay, so now we've got the title, we've got a concept, and now COVID comes down on the world, okay?
Yeah.
So I start, I used to do my presentations, I'd fly around the world and present at the big corporations and schools and universities and prisons and rehab clinics, whatever. But now I'm all virtual. So it's just, I worked with a studio downtown, and we do these virtual programs. So I thought, I want to create, I don't want it just to be one-way traffic. I want there to be dialogue with people, even though maybe I've got thousands of people on at one time. How can I find out how they're feeling? So I found this pretty cool technology, and I'd ask people, send me a text of one word that describes how you're feeling. I want one word right at the beginning of, so like, and they can text it to me, and it comes up on the screen so everyone else can see it. And it forms a word cloud. So the more frequent words are bigger. So like, say you have a lot of stress, and the word stress is repeated a lot, the stress word will be bigger than hope and optimism and love and faith. So because I was speaking to thousands and thousands of people, maybe through COVID, 100, 150,000 people. So I got to see how people are feeling. So the four big words, or the four most common words, were stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. I call it a SAD mindset. SADD mindset, stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. And I said to Noah, I said, hey, Noah, hey, people are suffering, man. Yeah. And I'm talking to companies that are doing super well. You know, some of the companies I'm working with, the employees are under no financial pressure. Yeah. Because they're doing super well. You know, certain sectors of the marketplace exploded in COVID.
Exactly.
I'm talking financially successful. So these are not people that are faced with financial stress, but they're faced with like real anxiety about their family, stress about what's going to happen in the world, the whole depression because we've been disconnected from each other. So I'm going, these are fundamental problems. Maybe in our book, we can write about these and they must be visible. It's not like we're not going to cloak and not have stress, anxiety, depression, and disconnection. It needs to be front and center. In fact, the book can be like a little bridge. So I want the negative before the positive. So I said to him, like, how many chapters do you think we should have? Like, what's a faith-based number? What's a number that has spiritual significance? Okay, because he's a poet, philosopher. He studied the Bible for his whole life.
Yeah.
So he said to me, well, in ancient Hebrew, every letter has a numeric. Okay. So he said 18 is a sacred number because 18 in Hebrew means chai, and chai means life.
Wow.
And we're going to have 18 chapters. So that's why we have 18 chapters, and every single chapter goes from the negative to the positive, despair to hope, powerlessness to empowered. So that was the structure. So now we have the structure, and then when we wrote the book, that was in our minds. How can we help this? How can we have this little book to be a guide for people that are really having a hard time?
Yeah. That's amazing. Shaun, first of all, I was just going to let you keep going because I know that you have so much more that you can share with us there. You know, as I was listening to you, just so many things were resonating with what I was able to experience through COVID, and a lot of people that we were around as well. You know, the despair and the anxiety and the depression. First of all, I just want to say, you know, thank you for being so honest and so willing to share, you know, the tragedy that happened to you and to your wife. I think that's a parent's greatest fear, right? Of the possibility of losing a child. And so I can tell that obviously that was a very, very hard time in your life and you and your wife's life, but I think it's so inspirational for you to be able to live out this code that you had adopted even before this tragedy. And now you were able to use it in your life and those experiences. And that gives hope to so many people that this isn't just something that's written in a book that actually has no real sense behind it, but is also obviously something that was lived out for you personally.
You know, it's amazing you say that Josh. You know, now when I do my work, my presentations, I ask people, send me one word after I've finished, and everyone's written their code and shared their code. So, you know, everyone's sort of on a very elevated plane. I ask people, okay, send me one word that you're going to take away with you. You know what the most common word is? Hope. How about that? The most common word is hope. And man, if I can do that,
Yeah.
It's really powerful. And I can see you're a guy of faith. I can see the big graphic behind your head here. And I want to tell I'll tell your team, your crew, your audience about hope. So we lost our boy. I'll tell you a story about God, and I'll tell you a story about prayer. Mm. So we lost our boy. It was terrible. We're just in this, when you lose a child, you're just in this black, dark, terrible place. And my wife was having a really, really tough time, as was I. But I had to try to be strong because I had to make sure that my wife survived. So I used to go. I'm Jewish, so I used to go and sit in my old temple where I had my bar mitzvah. Uh-huh. And if you go into a Jewish synagogue, they have the 5 books of Moses, first 5 books of the Bible. They call it in the Ark, and they're on a parchment form. But right above the Ark, there's a light. And in Hebrew, it's called Ner Tamid. This is the everlasting light. And this is the everlasting light of hope and faith. That light that light never goes out. And it symbolizes for all of us the faith and hope that will never go out in our hearts. Mm. Well, we hope that, even in times of extreme grief. And I would sit there and I would look and I'd pray. And I'd pray. My mom was a woman of prayer. She used to say, God's like an old friend. When you knock on the door, he's always home. That's what she used to say. My mom was every beautiful. Every conversation with my mom and dad would end the same way. God bless. That's what they would say. Every conversation I ever had with my mom. So that's how we were sort of brought up. So now we're in this. We're just in this super dark place. And my son had written an essay. He was in South Africa at my old school just for 1 semester. And I'd phoned him up that morning and he read me this essay, beautiful essay that he'd written about surfing. And one of the lines that he'd written were, "The light shines ahead." And I went, wow, Matthew. His name means gift from God in Hebrew. Yep. I went, wow, Matthew, this is beautiful. These words are beautiful. The light shines ahead. And then, he went off to school and then played this terrible game, and we lost him. But I remember those words, and when I was going through this grief process, I remember those words, but we were still. We just felt there was like no way forward. So my wife was in the hospital, and I was with her, and her mom was in the room, and a friend came to visit us, and walked into the room, and this is how our life can work. Walked into the room, and he said, "He was a very spiritual guy, this guy." And he had also lost a child about a year before. And he'd been working with this wonderful woman who was like a grief counselor, and someone who's really in touch with whatever you want to call it, the other side, heaven, whatever you want to call it. But he said, "I have a message from Matthew." Mm. One bolt of lightning hit that hospital. Bang, out of a clear blue sky. Not one cloud. I looked out the window, not one cloud in the sky. One bolt of lightning. Wow. One bolt. Can you imagine that one? And that was like a jolt. That was like a message. And based on what my son had read, the light shines ahead. It just sort of, it was sort of maybe a signal. Yeah. That now we had to take up life again. It was amazing.
Yeah. That's powerful. I mean, Shaun, I got to tell you, I'm usually not at a loss for words, but just listening to your story, I can just tell why so many people gravitate towards your message. Your authenticity in this interview has just been admirable. I just can't help but think, as I'm looking at everything that you've been through, you and your wife, obviously you knowing your purpose, discovering that. Um, when this code came to you when it was younger, how's it transformed for you over the years? How is it, obviously, going through some devastation, but like now that you've embraced it, now that you've seen how this is impacting millions of people's lives, how is something so simple been so transformational for you in the lives of other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, my code hasn't changed. It's just the way I interpret it.
Mm.
I think that changes.
Yeah.
It's like, they're in sort of organizational development and in motivational theory, there's this concept called the SMART goal.
Yep.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time sensitive. But the 12 lines that I wrote are not 12 goals. That is purpose, committed intent to achieve aims that are meaningful to self and others. So purpose and goals are different. So it's not time sensitive. I like to think that it's timeless, but for me, the real transformation and the real change that's happened over the last sort of 15 years has been getting people to write their own codes. So how about this? So my book has come out, my first book, Surface Code, which has come out, and it was at the printer when I lost my beautiful son. So I put it on hold for a while, and I wrote a little epilogue about Matthew. And then I thought, now I've got to bring this book out because you got it dedicated to him. So I brought the book out. And this is about the connectivity of life, Josh. It's like amazing how life can work. So now I'm sitting out at Rincon at the break that had the environmental challenge, where the code was developed in response to the issue at Rincon that I wrote for the kids that came down to the beach. A guy paddles up to me, he said, Shaun, I'm a headmaster at the local school, a principal at the local school. We only have 80 students. We'd love you to come and talk about your new book, The Code, to the students. He said, we have 2 little farmhouses. So I go down and I chat to the kids, and I got my book, and the local media comes down and they cover it. And when I'm chatting to the kids, I go, Surface Code's my code. I wrote 12 lines, 105 words. I wrote it in 15 or 20 minutes. What about your code? What about all of you, you 80 students? What about all of you writing your codes? 12 lines? Every line begins with I will. That's it. You just write your code. You write your purpose down and send it to me. So a week later, 80 students, 12 lines, I get nearly 1,000 lines of code back. The first line of code I get back from a 13-year-old young girl, I will always be myself. Based on what had happened to me, I cried when I read those words.
Yeah.
Because this young girl, she wasn't going to be pushed around. She wasn't going to be a victim of peer pressure. She wasn't going to be bullied. She was going to put her flag in the sand. I'll be myself. And then the other words these kids wrote, I will have faith. I will pray. I will hope. I was so stoked when I read these that I immediately phoned up my co-author. I'll show you. And we're going to write another book, and it's going to be called The Code. It's going to be a framework for positive decision making
Yeah.
and a way for kids to activate purpose. And every single chapter title is going to come from the kids.
Yeah.
So all the 12 chapters in this book, I'll pray, I'll have hope, I'll dream, I'll face my fears. They come from the kids. And then
Awesome.
I put the stories from my life in there. But how about that?
Yeah.
Huh? And then it's just, the connectivity of life. I think if you say yes, if you keep an open heart, if you respect others,
Mm-hmm.
I think you just end up being guided through life in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Shaun, as I'm just taking all of this in, I think one of the things, first of all, I am extremely calm right now. Like usually, through interviews, you just get amped up and you just get ramped up for things. But I think you just once again how you show up, you've just got such an amazing calmness about you, which allows what I've taken from this interview is just it's allowed what needs to be, right? It allows the authenticity that you bring to happen, and there's no hype around it. It's truly authentic, and we miss that, I think, in society. We miss the calmness of the situations. We miss the genuineness in the situations. And just that example of what you talked about with the second book, The Code, it came from the mouths of babes, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing more pure than that. And then as you mentioned this very early on about being in a flow state, and I think just kind of just putting this all together is that when you understand your purpose, when you can start living out that greater purpose, you are in that constant flow state because things come easy. And just like you had mentioned, the title to the book, The Surfer and the Sage, that came within 3 minutes, and people spend 300 hours and they don't have a title to their book. And you had it within 3 minutes, but it's because you are so authentic and you are living in that state of being and mind. And I just can't help but thinking of like all of the things that you get to help people discover because of that awareness that you have with yourself, who you are, what your purpose is, and your ability to really just harness that true authentic side of life.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. So the code started off to empower young people, to empower students.
Mm-hmm.
And when you work with students and when you speak with students, there can be no BS.
Yeah.
Zero, zipper, nothing, because I think the naivete of youth is like a window into your soul.
Mm.
They have this, you can't pull the wool over their eyes.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, this code thing, it's so juvenile and it's so kid-like. And I go, yes, it is. It is juvenile and it is kid-like, because in the busyness of life and in the striving for success, we just often lose that naivete that is a real source of inspiration, I think. And purity. You mentioned that word purity.
Mm-hmm.
It's very pure, and this process is very pure. And when I do this, and people have written their codes and they've shared their codes, I often say I think I've got the best job in the world, because I hear the beauty and the magnificence of the human spirit. I hear people making these statements in a crowded auditorium. They'll get up and they'll say, I'll be a better father, or I will have faith, or I will pray, or I will do what I say I will do, or I will forgive myself. How about that? I,
Yeah,
I
that's
did
a
that.
powerful one.
I was in a prison, in a jail, and there were all the whole grouping of male prisoners. I've done male and female prisoners, but they separate them. They don't have them together. And this one big strong guy, everyone wrote their codes, and they stood up one at a time and they read them. And when he got to that, he read out, "I will forgive myself," and he started to cry. This big, strong, tough guy, to show this extreme vulnerability in a very, in a jail. It's a very tough place. And I'm going like, what are the other prisoners going to do? Are they going to see this as a sign of weakness?
Mhm.
They all started crying. They all gathered around them and all put their arms around him. The connectivity through this process of naivete and vulnerability and authenticity was mind blowing, man. It just created, wow, it created such unity. And for me, when I look at the state of our country, and I look, Republicans on one side of the valley, Democrats on the other side of the valley, and this massive black hole in between. I like to think that the code can be a bridge, because when we write down who we really are, the best version of ourselves,
Yeah.
and not only do we share it, but we commit to it in front of others, there's this accountability.
Yeah.
And also there's this realization that while we are all different and we write different lines, beautiful lines, everyone writes beautiful lines. No one ever writes, "I will be successful." No one ever writes, "I will hit my third quarter goals." No one ever writes, "I'll make $1 million." People, that's not what life's about. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I don't tell anyone what to write. I'm just an observer. I just look and see what people write. But so what's really interesting, how about this? You can see how I love doing it, Josh.
Mhm.
I love doing
Once
it.
again, it's the genuineness that comes out, and that's what I love. Just
And I do
hearing
it.
you talk.
I mean, I do it a lot with all sorts of different groups, but I love doing it. But so everyone writes beautiful words. Um, Actually, a couple of like a famous psychology university studied the method, and they call it, when they write it, they say, well, people seem to get in touch with their best selves, which is kind of an interesting concept. But so everyone writes beautiful words, and they're all different, but we only write 2 lines. So I've read millions of lines of code because I've been doing it for so long. I've met with a lot of people. So we only write 2 lines of code. So our life purpose can be identified by 2 promises, 2 commitments that we make.
Hmm.
So it's like our life purpose is a river, and it's got 2 tributaries which come together. So everyone writes, and everyone's code can be divided one or the other. I will be better. So we want to be better. Compulsion to be better. We want to pray. We want to have faith. We want to have hope. We want to be a better husband, spouse, child, son, daughter. That's one half of it.
Mm.
The other half is, I will help others be better. We want to help people. We want to be a mentor.
Yeah.
We want to be a leader. We want to show people a positive path. We want to lift them up when they're down. It's amazing. So that is, people like, what's the meaning of life? And philosophers of struggle. And I'm going, I'm just reading how people perceive what is most important in life. And those are the 2 statements. We want to be better. We want to help others be better. How simple is that?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's
Humanity is a beautiful humanity. When the human spirit, it's amazing. And people think it's so complex, and it isn't.
Yeah.
It's simple and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, you do what so few people out there do. One of my favorite authors is John C. Maxwell. And one thing that I just love about his books is that he's able to get to the core of it, right? And he's able to take very simple simple statements and make them very powerful. And you have a gift for doing that as well too, Shaun. So this has been exactly what I've needed, to be honest with you. And I know that our people that are listening to this, the fans and the people that continue to follow us, this is a true gift for them. Because oftentimes we talk about like overcoming obstacles, we talk about overcoming challenges and getting to the next peak, but we don't often sit down and just have time to think and ponder like what you've just allowed us to do today and really get down to the things that are important. And so, Shaun, I got to tell you, thank you so much. This has just been an absolute pleasure for me to be here, to sit at your feet, to listen to you. And really, it has just been truly enjoyable. So the book, The Surfer and the Sage, is out.
Yeah.
People can go find it. They can just go to ShaunTomson.com to get it. Now, your name is not spelled like everybody's, like it's sounding. So we'll actually make sure we have this written out there. But where can they go to find the book? How can they follow you? How can they continue to be inspired by you?
Yeah, so that would be amazing. I love to connect with people. So you can just get the book on Amazon. But if you want to do the code process, so I want people to understand that the code is open source code. So anyone can use it in any way, shape, or form they want. Code was given to me by surfing and children, and the code is open source code. So you can go to my website, ShaunTomson.com. That's spelled ShaunTomson. You can see on there how you can use it. If you want to, there's a couple of videos on there. You can click on a video and you can show it to someone, and then you as a family, you can write your code as or business people or sports team, you can write your code. And then also I encourage you, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn, and connect with me on Instagram as well. So it's ShaunTomson. Like I say, I love to connect with people. If anyone, you can always directly email me on my website. You can directly email me. Often people might be going through a tough time, and my door's always open.
Yeah. Love it. And there's no doubt, I believe that. No doubt about it. So, Shaun, thank you so much, brother. This is just
awesome, Josh. Thanks for the amazing work you're doing. And it's been a real privilege and an honor to be on, and stay safe and keep hoping. And like my mom says, prayer, the power of it. It's amazing.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, guys, listen, as we wrap the show up here, usually I put the music on, but that is just not appropriate right now. This has just been too good of an interview with Shaun here. And I'm just going to leave it the parting words of, as I was listening to him, I continue to hear the word hope. Obviously, there's a lot of great words in here, but just I think that Shaun's message of hope and purpose, and what a beautiful way to end the show. I know that there's somebody in your life right now. You needed to probably hear this more than likely, but I guarantee there's somebody in your life that needed to hear this message today. And so I just ask you, just share this to get Shaun's message out there. Maybe even buy that book for them as well, too. What a wonderful gift that could be for somebody that needs to hear this message of such amazing hope in life. So love you all. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.